1914 Christmas Truce. The winter of 1914 was cruel, colder than anything the young soldiers of Europe had ever imagined. Along the Western Front, miles of frozen mud, shattered trees, and endless trenches stretched like scars across the earth. Gunfire echoed every day. Fear, hunger, and exhaustion lived beside the men like silent shadows. Among them was a 20-year-old British soldier named Thomas, shivering inside his muddy trench, his fingers numb from the freezing wind. He had left home only months earlier, promising his mother he would return before Christmas. But Christmas was now only hours away, and he was still surrounded by barbed wire and the sound of distant artillery across the battlefield, separated by only a few hundred yards. Young German soldiers sat huddled in their own trenches. One of them, a boy barely 19 named Karl, held onto a small wooden cross his sister had given him before he left home. He whispered a quiet prayer, not for victory but for peace, even if only for one night for weeks. Both sides had fought fiercely. Friends had been lost. Letters from home were filled with fear and longing. Every man felt the weight of war settle heavier on his shoulders. But on Christmas Eve, something unusual began to happen. The wind carried a sound, soft, fragile, almost impossible to believe. Thomas lifted his head from his trench wall, listening carefully. At first he thought it was the wind. Then he heard it again. A melody. Stille Nacht. Heilige Nacht. Silent night. A German Christmas song. The British soldiers froze. Some thought it was a trick. Others simply listened. The notes floated through the cold air, gentle and full of longing. Then unexpectedly, one of the British soldiers began to sing the English version. Silent night, holy night. The two voices, enemies by war, met. In the darkness, like two hands, reaching out, Thomas felt something shift inside him. Something warm he had almost forgotten. For the first time in months, he felt human again. Karl, hearing the English voices respond, smiled through the frost clinging to his eyelashes. He lifted a small lantern above the trench wall. Thomas saw the soft golden glow and felt his heart pound. No rifles, no shouting. Only light. More lights appeared. More voices joined. The battlefield, once filled with terror, now echoed with a strange, impossible harmony. Soldiers on both sides slowly peeked over the trench edges, their breath turning into white mist in the cold air. No one fired. No one moved aggressively. It was as if the world itself had paused to listen. Thomas whispered, "Is this real?" Karl whispered the same words at the same moment. In German, across a battlefield soaked in suffering, two young men who had never met shared the same hope, that maybe even in war, humanity could still breathe. And as the singing grew louder and more united, something extraordinary was about to happen the next morning, something that would be remembered for over a century. The night grew colder, but something warm began to spread through the trenches, a feeling none of them had expected to feel during war. As the German voices finished Stille Nacht, the British soldiers didn't know what to do at first. Silence hung in the frozen air. Then slowly, one British soldier lifted his voice and began singing the English version. Silent night, his voice trembled, not from fear but from something deeper, something human. More soldiers joined in. Two enemies, singing the same song, in the same night, under the same sky. When the song ended, a young German soldier bravely stood up from his trench holding a small lantern. Every British rifle locked onto him, but he didn't raise a weapon. Instead, he lifted his hand and called out in broken English, "Merry Christmas." The British soldiers looked at each other, unsure if it was a trick. But then a Scottish soldier climbed out, holding nothing but a piece of chocolate. Step by step, soldiers from both sides rose from their trenches and walked into the frozen no man's land. For months they had been firing on each other. Now they stood face to face, seeing not enemies, but boys their own age, cold, scared, and far from home. One British soldier noticed a German soldier shivering without gloves. He took off his own and handed them over. A German soldier shared the last piece of bread he had saved for Christmas. Someone else pulled out a small family photo and showed it to the men who were supposed to kill him. Laughter, not gunfire, echoed across the battlefield. They exchanged buttons, badges, and small gifts. They shook hands. Some hugged. Some even cried, but not from pain, but relief. Then one soldier shouted, "Football! Let's play!" Someone brought out a ball, and in the middle of the war zone, under the faint winter light, British and German soldiers kicked around a frozen leather football. They cheered. They slipped in the snow. They forgot for a moment the fear that had been consuming them. For a few hours, the world felt normal, no orders, no hatred, no bullets, just human beings, remembering they were human. When the game ended, the soldiers stood together one last time. They knew what waited for them tomorrow. The war would continue. They would be forced back into their trenches, forced to point rifles at men who had shared bread and laughter with them only hours before. But in that moment, in that miracle of Christmas, they saw something more powerful than war, the proof that humanity can survive even in the darkest places. As they returned to their trenches, a British soldier whispered, "Maybe one day, the world will remember this night and choose peace." Dawn broke slowly over the frost-covered battlefield. The snow glittered faintly under the pale winter sun. For a few fleeting hours, the soldiers had felt something extraordinary, a peace that war had tried to erase. But now the whistles and drums of command returned, calling them back to reality. Thomas and Karl trudged back to their trenches. The warmth of the night still lingered in their hearts, a quiet ember refusing to die. They exchanged one last glance across the field, a silent promise passing between them. They would remember this Christmas. No matter what came next, orders were given, guns were raised. The world of war returned with its harsh rhythm. Yet for the first time, Thomas did not feel fear as sharply as before. And Karl, he did not feel hatred. In their hearts, something new had taken root. The knowledge that even in the darkest moments, humanity could shine. Stories of the truce began to spread quietly among the men. Each shared small tales of laughter, shared chocolate, and a football game in no man's land. Some officers tried to suppress it, calling it dangerous, but the memory persisted. The soldiers had glimpsed a truth that no bullet could destroy. Peace was possible, even in the midst of war. Years later, Thomas returned home, forever carrying the memory of that night. He told the story to anyone who would listen, not as a tale of victory, but as a story of courage, empathy, and the power of small acts. Karl returned home too, clutching the same wooden cross, sharing the story with his children, teaching them that even enemies could be friends if they dared to see one another's humanity. And though the war raged on, the 1914 Christmas Truce became more than just a memory. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest winters, light can be found in simple acts of kindness. The lesson lived on. No matter how impossible it seems, one act of humanity can change everything. One small choice and to see the other as human, to offer a smile, a handshake, or a song, can echo through time. Thomas whispered in his heart as he looked at the quiet battlefield one last time. The world will remember this night, and perhaps one day we will all choose peace. And that night, over 100 years ago, humanity won, if only for a few hours, proving that even amidst war, the heart can remain unbroken.